you know, they go there and they're trying to figure out how to get to the Stillaguamish River and the Snohomish River, or to head south down to Lake Washington, the Green Duwamish, Nisqually, Puyallup. The biggest salmon hatcheries in Coho hatcheries in Puget Sound are all in the south part of the sound, and that's why Edmonds is so good. So those fish end up down there in Browns Bay, and it makes fishing really good. And so those fish are just kind of showing up here the last few days. The Coho definitely showed up about a week later than they normally do. You would have expected fishing like it was last Friday and Saturday. You would have expected that to happen last week, not the week before last week, not when it did. Typically, the peak of the run is around the 25th or 26th, and the Coho Derby is usually, just because of the way the calendar works out, is a week later than what it is. It's just the way the dates line up. So usually the Everett Coho Derby is at the peak part of the run, but we're going to be right in the heart of it this weekend. And if you haven't looked at the weather, boy, it looks really nice for Saturday. I think we had one day last year when it was nasty. Do you remember, Mark? Saturday was the bad day.
Yeah.
Sunday looks a little iffy, but I don't think anybody, even if you have a little smaller boat, I don't think you're going to have a problem getting out. It looks like it's going to blow up until about daylight, and then it's going to start looking a little bit nicer. Sorry about the cough. So it looks like we're going to have good weather for this derby. If you're going to weigh your fish in, I believe you can weigh them at Edmonds this year. Is that true? Okay. So if you're down there fishing at Edmonds and you're running out of time and you got a nice fish, you don't have to come all the way back to Everett. You can weigh them. Does anybody know where the weigh-in station is at Edmonds? Right at the top of the ramp at the sling. And then the other weigh-in station is going to be right here in the parking lot. And then I believe, and then we're going to have the ceremonies probably indoors this year. And there's a Seahawks game that day. But I got good news for you. The Seahawks game is going to be, we're going to move this screen over into the dry stack over here, and we're going to live stream the Seahawks game there through my projector. So come and enjoy the game. And I think we have a 50-50 raffle there too. Does that money go to Salmon for Soldiers? So the beer garden, the 50-50 raffle, all that money is going to go to Salmon for Soldiers, which is a really, really good event. So, got a few more minutes. The sun's going down. It's going to be pretty good. So, one more time, I want to put out another shout out to Sean Christensen over here, running his equipment. He's doing all the live feed. He's got a hat we're going to give away. We're going to give, this hat's going to go, one of his hats is going to go with one of my books. Okay. Sun's almost down. I knew this was going to happen. I thought earlier in the day, man, it's cloudy out. We're going to get started early. But no.
4 Martinez's
No.
in here? No.
If we were going fishing tonight, it'd be cloudy and raining and blowing 25 miles an hour. But if you're going to have a seminar and you want it to be cloudy and rainy and blowing 25 miles an hour, so everybody wants to be outdoors. No, you can't ask for that.
Of course not.
So I think I pretty much, so if you could, turn off your cell phones because we're doing this live feed. I appreciate it. Unless you're a doctor, your wife's expecting. But if your wife's expecting, you shouldn't be here. And so that's none of my business. You do what you got to do. Just don't tell him you came to see me.
Or me.
Or Connor. So, we just have to wait a couple more minutes. I'm going to level off my screen. We can start. Sorry about the little bit delay. I knew that was possibly going to happen because it happens every year.
I think you got to bring it this side. This so it doesn't. See what it looks like.
Nothing like good old wood shims for
That looks pretty good.
leveling up the projector. Nope, one more. Perfect.
Beautiful.
There we go. Little bubble gum, and
That'll work.
we're just missing, we need some duct tape.
WD.
Yeah, I introduced Connor. One more time, that's Connor Martinez.
Connor Martinez.
That's my nephew. That's not my son.
John is my uncle. My dad's over here.
And your mom.
And my mom.
Don't forget your
and
mom.
my girlfriend's here.
Hey, so if you have any arguments about the rules tonight, I brought my pamphlet. And if you saw my Facebook this week, you know what? After 66 years, I'm trying to get smarter. So when I post the rules now, I just started this week, so it took all these years to figure that out. I posted, if you notice, I posted the page numbers where I got the information. So if there's any question on the rules, we got that. Hey, my new book. A lot of you guys probably have. This is the 4th or 5th edition. And this edition came out 60 days ago. We added 10 more pages.
I sell them
And
at my store.
You
I
can
got
buy
them
one from Connor for $29.95, or you can win one in the raffle tonight. A lot of the maps you're going to see tonight, most of the maps I'm going to show you tonight are all brand new. If you've been at my Coho seminar before, you've never seen any of these maps I have tonight. In fact, almost all the material I'm going to show you tonight is all brand new. I only have a handful of slides from my old seminars. And I'm going to show you some really cool techniques that I think are going to help you out quite a bit. So, most of the maps are in here, a lot of good information in here. And I want to tell you a story, and then we're going to get going. I was down at Edmonds a few days ago, and there was a guy who looked like he was dead in the water. Just want you to know, I don't just go fishing, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I guess I am a little bit. But anyway, I was fishing, and they looked like they were dead in the water. So I went over there to see if they needed some help. And the cool part is that gentleman come up here tonight to thank me for something. Where are you at? Right here, sitting right there. I went over there to see if he needed help. Maybe he needed a tow in or something like that. So, you know, I'm always looking out for other people. We all should do that when we're on the water. You know, you think sometimes, well, gosh, I don't want to help that guy, but you never know when it's your turn. Because you got to remember, we're in boats, and there's nothing, all of us in this room know there's nothing more unreliable than a boat. So, it's going to be, everybody's going to have their turn. 3 weeks ago, from the shipwreck down here, I came back to Bayside here on my 10 horsepower motor. I had a light on my boat that I had no idea what it meant, and a buzzer going off, and I just needed to change the oil. But you know, I was really, and that's what's nice here at Bayside. They, you know, I go, you know, I was doing it like once a year, and you know, I fish 4 or 5 days a week. And these guys say, you're supposed to do this every 100 hours on these Yamaha 250s. I said, really? You know, I was doing it every 300 hours, and I thought I was kind of like ahead of the curve a little bit. Man, I do this every year, but I guess you're supposed to do it more often, and I will. Okay, let's turn off the lights. And let's get going. I think I'm the only person who knows where the lights are at. Possibly. Okay, we got, anybody know where those lights are at? Hey, Jake, Tom, you guys know where these lights are at? Please. No, the light switches haven't gone anywhere new. Oh, are they? Huh? Well, we're gonna figure it out. No, can't do that. I did those. Okay, he's going to call the boss.
Call the head honcho.
He's on his way. There's always something. It's more the Martinez luck. Connor and I talk about it all the time. You know, being born a Martinez, trust me, is not fun because my brother will attest to this too. When you're born a Martinez, especially if you're a male, you're born with everything in the world that could possibly go wrong. If you're a Martinez, everything takes longer and costs more than for anybody else, and it never fails. When we had that big rainstorm last week, the water just didn't come in the back door at John's Sporting Goods. It went in the back door and went out the front door, and the closest drain was about a half a block away. Yeah. And so that's what Connor and I did last week. We were unpacking stuff when nobody, when nobody's around. We were in the back room. We had a dump truck full of cardboard that we hauled out of the back room. We didn't lose any merchandise at all. We had some boxes that got ruined, but it was a mess, wasn't it?
We got lucky.
That was a mess.
Yep.
The good old Martinez.
Martinez curse.
The curse is alive and well. Okay, let's go. Okay, here we go. You ready, Sean? Okay. I'm going to show you a few pictures, with the exception of one picture. These pictures are all within the last 10 days, 2 weeks. This is from Saturday. The fish were a little bit bigger on Saturday than they were, in the previous weeks. The fish have been getting a little bit bigger every day. These fish were caught at Edmonds, fishing out in the middle of the channel. If you were down at Edmonds on Saturday, you know how crowded it was. We had the event, the Salmon for Soldiers event, and there was a lot of people out fishing. So we just went out in the middle of the channel, and this works really good, to be out in the middle of the channel. Let me tell you a theory that I work on all the time, and you might have thought of this, and you maybe don't. It makes a lot of sense to me anyway. A lot of times when I'm fishing, I kind of look at how many people are around. I know where all the good spots are, just because I fish so much. But sometimes it's so crowded, like where I wanted to fish. The tide was slowing down on Saturday, and down at Edmonds, I like to fish in real close, especially when you get about an hour before low tide. If you have a low tide in the morning, I like to move in less than 400 feet of water. It's real deep in there, and so I like fishing in fairly close. And it was blowing fairly hard on Saturday, and the tide was running real hard. And boy, I went in there, and there were so many boats in there, you couldn't maneuver. So I told my son, I said, look, Jordan, we're going back out there in the middle where there's nobody. For some reason, everybody moved inside. For what reason, I don't know. Boats kind of follow boats, if you ever notice that. So we went back out in the middle, and there was nobody out there, and we had those 4 fish in 20 minutes, just like that. And that was after an hour and a half of fishing without a bite. Because the day before, we got all these fish. This was on Friday. And these fish, we got down to Edmonds, and it just didn't matter where you were. It was just a lot of fish. It was easy fishing. Jordan's from Denver. Him and his girlfriend there. His girlfriend is there on the far left, and she'd never been to Puget Sound before. She'd been fishing in various places, and she thought fishing was like this all the time. I fish with Ann, my wife, quite a bit. She's homesick tonight, but we go out quite a bit. You guys see us out there. And most days, even on a good day of coho fishing, you have to work at catching 4 fish. I mean, it's not a struggle when the fishing's really good, but sometimes it can be. Sometimes you have to fish till noon, 1, 2. maybe longer sometimes, to catch 4 fish. And this was a day we landed 9 and kept 8. And I don't want to say in a real short period of time, but it didn't take us very long to catch these fish. And there's days like this, and there was a lot of people catching fish that day. And we're going to be talking about fishing at Edmonds extensively tonight, because that's where the action's at. There's a picture of Connor and I on the left there. That's from last year. That's down at the weather buoy, which is a little bit south of Edmonds. And we'll have a map of that coming up too. And this is my good friend Don Ringman. Don and I were childhood friends. We lived across the street from each other, right up here on 8th and 7th Street here on the north end of town. And there was a couple fish that he caught that day when we went out. Hey, there you go. I knew those lights went out. Okay, there on the left is Ann and I, my wife. A limit of fish that one of the days that we fished, either last week or the week before. And the other fish is Ann right there. I'm telling you what, I wish Ann was here tonight. If anybody is ever in my boat and I want somebody to net my fish, I'm telling you what, my wife can net fish better than any other guy. I'd have her net my fish any day. Women are really patient. You know, us guys are, you know how we're a little bit aggressive. You know, we want to get that fish in the boat. And she's just patient, and she waits till that fish comes alongside the boat. And boy, she just scoops them right up. She gets them the first pass by. So it's really a pleasure fishing with her. Just a lot of fun. Just a great thing to do for men and women. What a great thing to do, spend your time out on Puget Sound. Okay, the peanut gallery up here. We're going to watch a video right here. This is a video that I made last year, and so this is about 4 minutes long. And then I'm going to have another video a little bit later on in this presentation about making herring strips. So let's watch this, because this is going to kind of fill in the blanks of the stuff we're going to talk about. That I like to use are the Pro Troll blinking flashers. They have an LED light on them right here. It's water activated and it makes the light flash. It provides a lot of attraction to bring the fish over to your gear. Plus it's got a UV surface right here that attracts the fish. And one of my main pieces of equipment that I use is the Silver Horde Ace High Fly. This is a UV fly. We've nicknamed it Purple Haze, mainly because it glows in the water, and this is one of the very best pieces of equipment coupled with this LED flasher right here to catch coho in Puget Sound. Another piece of equipment that I like to use is a Purple Haze flasher. There's a lot of manufacturers of these particular flashers, but what you've seen that I've done with this, I've modified it. I put the Pro Troll blinking light. I cut a hole into the flasher and put the blinking light on that. Now with this flasher, I like to use the Gold Star OAL 12R Purple Haze Squid. It's kind of the same thing as the Ace High Fly, it's just a little bit more full bodied. On all my squids that are behind the flasher, I attach a small sliver of herring. What I've done is I've filleted the herring the night before and I cured it with rock salt, and that makes it stay on the hook for up to 15-20 minutes at a time. These are my prepared herring strips that I cut up the night before. I filleted them, I put layers of rock salt on them so that they're cured by the morning. And these will be good up to 2 or 3 days. Now when I cut these strips up in the evening, what I do is I leave them at room temperature overnight to let them cure, and then I put them on ice the next morning or put them in the refrigerator to store them for the next coming days of fishing. When letting your line out while coho fishing, it's important to let your line out approximately 25 feet behind the downrigger. So we'll do that right now. Now, what's real important is that you let out both lines exactly the same distance, so when a coho comes up behind your gear, he can choose from the gear on the left side of the boat or the right side of the boat, and then he can make up his mind. So I've let this line out maybe 25 feet, and I'm using the offshore heavy-duty release. And the reason why I'm using the heavy-duty release is because we're going to be trolling 3.5 miles an hour, and if we're fishing 65 to 115 feet deep, there's going to be an enormous amount of pressure on the line, and we don't want any false releases. Okay, we've got that hooked up to the downrigger. Now I'm going to let my downrigger down to 65 feet. And now I'm going to take up the excess line, and my rod's going to have a very deep bend so that if I get a strike, it'll telegraph to my rod, and I can get to my rod right now. Boy, there's a good one, Ann. Hey, we got one on the other rock. Grab it right away. A little bit of drama there at the end. Sorry about that. Just so you know, on that video it said the sweet spot's 50 to 75 feet. This past 7 days, you can just set your downriggers at 45 feet, especially if you're going down the Edmonds area. Put them at 45 feet and just leave them there. The week before, the fish were all at 60, but since we had all that rain and wind that we had, cooled the water temperature off quite a bit, and the fish are now at 45 feet. I'm like everybody else. I look at fish on my fish finder and I chase them around. Just put your stuff down at 45 feet. And I'm sure anybody who's been fishing is going to say, well, I caught him at 100, I caught him at 60, I caught him at this depth, I caught him at all these other depths. But just so you know, I fished every day last week, and every fish I caught was at 45 feet. Driving home, I wish my wife was here right now. Driving home the other day, when we were in the middle of last week, we were driving home, and it was kind of quiet in the truck, and we caught all our fish. And so we're driving home, we're kind of exhausted. She goes, John, did you notice that all the fish were caught on my rod today? I said, yeah, I kind of noticed that. And you know what I've noticed, though? In fact, I've had this conversation with a lot of people the last few days, is when you're fishing shallow like that, almost all the fish will hit on the side that the kicker motor. If you're using a kicker motor, not trolling with the main motor, almost all the fish are hitting on that side of the boat. Okay, if you're going fishing, you want to go through the rules, Connor?
Sure. Yeah, Area 8-2, which most of you know, it'll be from the ferry to the shipwreck, is closed now. You're not able to fish that. So your fishing starts at the possession point buoy south down to 10. Area 9, you can keep hatchery fish. You can keep 2. Once you get down to 10, you can start to keep wild fish, and it's the same there. You can keep 2 salmon, 2 coho.
So what happens if you catch a wild fish in 10?
Exactly. If you're fishing in 10 and you get a wild fish, you cannot fish in Area 9 anymore.
You're stuck in 10.
You're stuck in Area 10. So remember that.
But if you catch a hatchery fish in 9, you can go fish 10.
Go fish 10, that's right. Yep.
Okay. Don't forget that. You don't want to be that guy that's landing a fish down an 8-2 this weekend, especially if you got a derby ticket. Okay. We pretty much went through this. The wild hatchery fishing rule: catch a wild coho in Area 10, you're stuck in 10 for the day. The rate of catch down in Area 10 last week was about 80% marked, 20% hatchery. Pretty much ran that way almost every day. So
80% hatchery and
80% hatchery.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Glad I brought you along to keep me honest.
Good for something.
Yes. Okay. Catch a hatchery coho in Area 10? You can still go to 9.
Yes. Yep.
The rules are confusing.
I know.
You know, Connor and I do this every day. We're talking fishing every day at the counter. I don't know how anybody goes fishing and feels that they're abiding by all the rules. I mean, especially the guy that goes out. I mean, I feel sorry for the guy that goes out 2 or 3 times a year. You know, he's going out there with his family. He's going out there with his kids. You know, and you're trolling along. It's like, man, can I keep this fish? Yeah. I talked to guys at the store this week, Connor, who threw wild fish back who were fishing Area 10.
Area 10, yeah.
Yeah, and they were in the Edmonds Derby too. Okay, catch hatchery coho in Area 9, can go to Area 10, fish coho. Okay, so everybody knows what the rules are for this weekend.
Mind your way.
A lot of you guys already know what these salmon look like, but you know, there's probably nobody in this room that wants to say, I don't know what a coho looks like. I don't know what a Chinook looks like. I don't know what a humpy looks like. It's really easy to be confused between a Chinook and a pink salmon. So let's go over that. We'll just go over this real quick. Your Chinook salmon, let me see if I can just get a little bit better focus on this. There we go. Chinook salmon, there's no place that I know of, well, maybe in Deep South Sound might be open for Chinook, but anywhere in this area, 9 and 10, you can't keep Chinook, period. So your Chinook, the easiest way to tell them is they got a black gum line and they have round spots on their tail, and their tail is very silvery. A coho, that's what you guys are going to be catching in the next few days, is they got a white gum line. You really can't tell by looking at this picture, but if you had these two fish side by side, I had a coho the other day that was a pretty good sized coho, and I was looking at it, and I thought, gosh, you know, and this is after I bonked it, and I'm pretty good at telling the fish. And, you know, it had spots on its back. You know, a lot of times it gets real apparent when they get in fresh water, but when they're in salt water, you don't see the spots that good. And so I had another coho in the box, so I started comparing them side by side, and it was a coho. So that's good. I didn't want to bonk a fish. And this fin right back here on the back by the tail, that's the adipose fin. So if that's missing, you can keep that fish in Area 9. Mm-hmm. And our steelhead club, we clip all those fins off by hand with a pair of scissors that are just made for that. The state has these big trailers, and they suck these fish out of the pond, and they come up in this trailer, and a computer is watching that fish. It grabs that fish, that little smolt that's just real small, and it looks at where the adipose fin, and this thing comes out and clips that fin off. It's pretty neat technology. It's been around for quite a while. So, and then on the bottom is pink salmon, and you can still keep pink salmon in all of Puget Sound. And there's no wild or hatchery. They're just all wild fish. So that's an explanation of the different types of salmon.
Another fish you might run into is a chum. I saw a picture of a chum the other day. They look a lot like a silver. They're really hard to tell the difference. The big difference is the tail. A chum salmon will have a V'd tail. Coho kind of has a flatter tail on them. A chum salmon will still have white gums too, so it'll look a lot like a coho. So just be sure you know what you're keeping, because you can't weigh chum in.
Yeah. And they're out there right now. They're fairly hard to catch in salt water. You don't catch them, but you know, when you catch one, you think you have the biggest coho that anybody's seen in a long time, especially this year when the average coho is 5 to 7 pounds. Okay, tough fishing equals tough choices. Most years, with the exception of this year, the fishing for coho is always good, right at the break of day. This year, everything's different this year for some reason. All my good fishing has been on the outgoing tide. Doesn't matter what time of day it is. If the tide's going out, I've had my best fishing. Every year. All the years that I fished down at Edmonds, the best fishing's always been on the flood tide. It's just, it doesn't matter if it's in the morning, in the afternoon, what time it is. But this year, it's just different. Why? I can't tell you. But, you know, it's just different every year. So, but I like to be fishing at first light. There's many mornings when there's a really good coho bite that will last for about 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes in the morning. And I've seen that down at Edmonds, not last week, but the week before. There was a really good bite out in the middle of the channel out there, and we'll look at some maps and talk about that. And then there wasn't a bite till way later on in the day, till afternoon. So strategically position yourself, and that will mean a lot more when we start bringing up the maps and show you some of the good fishing spots. Now, obviously, we can't go around and show you every spot in Puget Sound because we just don't have enough time to do that. But we're going to show you the best spots. And it's all about the tides. I'm telling you what, on Coho, the best fishing, and especially this year, like I just explained, is an hour before low tide. It's just plain good right there, as soon as the water starts slowing down. So you want to be in position. You don't want to be out running around, switching positions. You know, you're down in Area 9, you're on the west side of the bar, and you're not catching any fish, and you're thinking, boy, I ought to go to Edmonds. But you don't want to be moving when you get right towards an hour before any tide change, because that's when you're going to catch your fish. So you want to be in the best spot available, and we'll talk about that tonight. Because the spots we're going to show you, not only are there the good spots, you want to be in real particular spots during particular stages of the tide. And you don't get that except by years and years of fishing. It takes a long time. I'm still learning a lot of it myself, trying to get a handle on it. Don't use crazy gear. If we talk about anything tonight, if you don't learn anything tonight, don't fish with crazy gear. I fall in that trap myself. Somebody was down at the store a week ago, and they did really good on white coho killers. And granted, they can be really, really good. And so the bite was off for 30 minutes one day, so I knew better, and so I put one on, and it was just shaker, shaker, shaker. And if anybody you don't know what a shaker is, that's a sublegal fish or a real small coho, a smolt size. And it was a kind of a boneheaded thing to do. And I knew better. I should have just stuck with the gear that I always catch fish on. I put my regular gear back on, and the bite was just off for a while. We ended up catching our fish a little later on in the day. So don't use crazy gear. Every day you go fishing, I don't care who you are, where you are, I don't care how good a fisherman you are, I don't care how bad a fisherman you are. Somebody's going to catch fish on something that you've never heard of, something you've heard of you've never used, and they're going to fill the boat that day with fish. And you just can't run to John's Sporting Goods and buy that. Now, Connor can't be happier than that. That's how he makes his living. People chasing that ultimate lure. I do it myself, and I know better. Use the stuff that works all the time. Tonight, we're going to show you a really narrow selection of gear. There's lots of things that work. We don't have 2 days to show you all the different things that work. If you went in my boat right now that's just 50 feet away from here and looked at my coho tackle, you're going to see all the same color of flasher. You're going to see ace-high flies, all one color, and you're going to see 3.5 OAL Gold Star squids, all the same color. I use the same thing day in and day out, except for that one day that I put the white coho killer on. It was like a stupid thing to do, but I did it. Stick to your game plan. And we're all victims of this. We all are, including myself. Back to the bite goes off for 30 minutes, and the first thing you're thinking, start talking to your buddy. Should we go over here? Should we go over there? I heard somebody catch fish over here the other day. Somebody got a fish over here. If you know the fishing's been really good in one spot, and you know the bite's going to come on, there's nothing worse than leaving that spot. When I was fishing up with Jake is still here? Over there? When I was fishing up with Jake in the San Juans this summer, this is the perfect example. All the boats were fishing off Eagle Point for Chinook, and all the boats were fishing out in deep water, and the water's starting to slow down. I said, Jake, we got to go in here and fish really close to the beach in here. There's no boats in there at all. It's a place where I always catch fish. I knew I had to be there when the water was slowing down. And Jake and I went in there, and we just slayed the Chinook in there. It was just really good fishing. It was about being at the right spot at the right time. There was no reason to go in there early until the water slowed down. It was about an hour, half hour before low tide. We went in there, and we got our fish immediately. And it happens all the time. That wasn't something that just happened that day. Every place you go fishing, it happens. You hear about guys who catch fish all the time. Everybody you know, or everybody here in this room knows somebody who goes out, and they regularly catch fish all the time. And yeah, that's it. That's it. I just go more. The only thing I do different than everybody else is I just go more often. So, if you go often enough, you get lucky. But I stick to my game plans. Probably the one thing that I do a lot better and I can't say I'm real good at it because, every day that I've been down at Edmonds and the bite's been off for a half hour, I got my binoculars out. I'm looking over at Jeff Head. There's one boat over there. And I'm looking over at Kingston, and there's one boat over there. And I say to myself, I'm just going to stay here. Doesn't look good over there. So anyway, that's just the John Martinez rule of fishing right there in that slide. And I'm telling you, if you stick to that, you're going to do well most of the days. We all go out, every one of us, myself, everybody included. We go out and we have bad days of fishing. That's just life. Everybody catches fish around you. I was down at Edmonds one day last week. I was down there at daylight, and they're catching fish all around me. And I've been limiting out really fast every day, thinking I'm the greatest fisherman that ever went to Edmonds. And when your number comes up for a good day or a bad day, they were just slaying them around me, and it's like, boy, I'm not going to catch fish today. We ended up catching our limits later on in the day, but those things happen. Okay, Skagit Head. Now we're going to go through our series of maps. Most years, this is especially like last week and this week, boy, you can't find a better place to fish on the outgoing tide. Most years, there's no better place to fish than on this big rip that comes right off this buoy, and right here, in this spot right here that goes into Max Welton in there. It's just killer diller this time of year. There's no fish over there. I don't want to say none. I've made 2 trips there on the way to Edmonds thinking that I'm gonna stop there while nobody's fishing there, and I'm gonna find some fish, and I'm gonna have it all to myself. Just very odd that there's so many fish down at Edmonds, and there's not a lot of fish, but there's a pretty fair amount of fish down at the shipwreck down south of Muckleteel. This is one of the only years when this has not been good fishing. So you can go there, but I wouldn't spend a lot of time in here. But the reason why I'm going to show a lot of maps that even may not be good fishing this year, because you want to catalog all this stuff, because next year the fish are going to be completely someplace different. So this is one of the very best places to fish in Puget Sound for coho, right here when the tide is going out. And you fish these big rips that come off this buoy, and you fish on the rough side of the buoy. And those rips will go especially on the bigger outgoing tides. Those big rips will be going way inside of Useless Bay. Very, very, very good place to fish.
I know you do coho, but would that go be the same for kings as well?
The question is, I'm going to take questions at the end, okay? But I'll answer your question being that you asked me that. I should have said that from the beginning. Skagit Head was quite good for Chinook fishing this summer. All of you who fished, and I'm glad you brought that up. The Chinook fish, tell me Chinook fishing wasn't good this summer, you guys and gals. Chinook fishing in Puget Sound, I go to Canada, I go to Sitka every year. Puget Sound rocks the last 3 years. Especially this year. I've never seen better Chinook fishing in all the years that I fished, even in the good old days. Connor and I went several times after work. We did really well.
You caught
The
fish
fishing
every
was
time?
just flat out good. But I didn't fish down in that area right there for Chinook, but there's a lot of people who did very successfully. Okay, possession buoy. Make notes of this for this weekend, especially if you're launching your boat at Everett. Don't want to go to Edmonds. See this line right here, that little magic line right here? On this side here, you get a ticket this weekend. And if you catch fish, you get kicked out of the derby. On this side of the line, you get to keep hatchery fish. This is Area 9, part of Area 9. This is Possession Bar. One of my absolute most favorite places to fish in Area 9 is right here at the buoy. East of there, starting in 250 feet of water. And I like to work in that little area in 250 feet of water right there. And if I don't catch anything, then I troll across. I caught a fish. We had one fish to go last week when I was fishing with my friend Don Ringman. We stopped there and got about halfway across and caught a fish there. That was just right in the middle of the day. This is called the horseshoe hole right here. A lot of times those fish flood across the bar and they get dumped right in this big hole right here, and they exit this little spot right here, and they mill around right here. And what these fish are doing is they're coming down Admiralty Inlet, they're coming down here, and they're going to turn north. They can either go along this shoreline and go to the Stillaguamish River. That's the reason why these fish hang out here. These fish don't just hang out here for a reason. They're going someplace. And the fish that are going to the Snohomish will either go up the middle of the channel, but most of them go here to the shipwreck. And all of us find good pink salmon fishing at the shipwreck. We find excellent coho fishing. I've heard that it's been pretty fair there the last couple days. There's a lot of wild fish there. It's going to be about 90% not hatchery, just the opposite. It's going to be 90% wild fish right there. And then here, this is what we call the southeast corner of Possession Bar. All of you who fish Chinook this summer found a lot of fish there. It was just extraordinary fishing. Just extraordinary fishing. So keep this in mind, this little circle right here for the next couple days this weekend. That and fishing here at the shipwreck, and we'll talk about the shipwreck.
Fish that on the incoming tide?
Actually, yeah, because the water's going to be coming. I'm glad you brought that up, Connor. Remember, the water's going to be crossing this bar, and these fish are in here in Useless Bay. They're holding up. And that tide changes. They get dumped in here because the water's going this way and up that way. When the tide's coming in, they get dumped here and they get exit there. And they exit right here on that incoming tide, and then they go to wherever they're going. Remember, fish, they like the path of least resistance. So when the tide's coming in, that's their clue to go over to the shoreline over there and mill around at the shipwreck for a day or two, and then head to where they're going, up the river of choice.
And we do the same thing there. You look for tide rips. Tide rips are a very good spot to fish for coho. You get a lot of bait holding up in tide rips. And you fish right, you don't get in them. There's always a bunch of junk in them. You usually fish, like John said, the rough side of them.
Yeah, the rough side's a little cleaner side of the tide rips.
And you find lots of fish in there. A lot of
And the other thing, I'm glad you brought that up, Connor. The other thing that I look for when I'm fishing, not just tide rips, and I'm always looking for tide lines. They're not as pronounced as a tide rip, and you'll see them. If you're not looking for them regularly, now that I'm telling you about it, you'll notice it all the time. There'll be these little seams in the water. It's not a full-blown tide rip where there's two different currents coming together. There'll just be a little seam in the water, and there's always fish along those seams. Just always fish along those seams. If you ever see me fishing down at Edmonds the last couple weeks, you know, I'm always looking forward, and I'm always looking for tide seams. And if I'm not catching any fish, I'll head for those seams immediately. A lot of times they don't appear at all until the water starts slowing down a little bit, until you get closer to tide changes.
That's why we say hour before tide or hour after. You'll hear me and John say that quite a bit. We want to get there an hour before the tide, and we'll stay an hour after. And we'll fish the whole thing, and you won't move.
Yeah, especially during the tide changes. When the tide changing, you stay where you're at.
fishing time.
because if you're running around, you're wasting time. This is Pilot Point. If any of you ice fish Chinook this summer, extraordinary fishing. Just extraordinary fishing. But we're talking about Coho. And this is the yellow buoy. Now remember, every fish that enters Puget Sound has got to come down through here in Admiralty Inlet, and they have to turn this corner and either come up this way, up to the Stillaguamish River, the Snohomish River, and to a lesser degree the Skagit River, because most of your Skagit fish come through Deception Pass. They all have to come by here. Oops, sorry about that.
And just a thought, at the spot above there, there'll be a lot of guys mooching up there, that top spot. So just be aware of that if you're trolling.
That's point, no point.
Yeah. There'll be guys mooching in there, so just be ready for that.
There's almost been nobody fishing out here by this yellow buoy this year. And I think, this is just a thought of mine, I think most of the fish this year are coming right down here the center and turning wide and going to Edmonds. Because they either got to go that way, down the center there, or they got to come down the shoreline. And I know they're not going down that shoreline, because I'll tell you how I know. Because I stop there regularly on my way to Edmonds. It's one more one of these things where I stop there looking for that silver bullet, looking for that place where I'm just going to rip them apart while there's nobody around. Every time I've gone there, except the last time I went there just a few days ago, I've caught one fish there, and it's funny, the 3 trips in a row that I went there on my way to Edmonds, I caught that fish immediately and never got another bite. So my thought is, those fish have to be here at the yellow separation buoy out here and turning wide and going down to Edmonds. Remember, for you guys who are here early before the seminar started, most of the fish, most of the coho in Puget Sound go south. They don't come up this way. Your biggest fish are in the Snohomish, but the majority of the fish are south of here. Lake Washington, Green Duwamish, Nisqually, Puyallup, and then a lot of small creeks. The Indian tribes net pen raise a lot of coho in all from Edmonds south, Jeff Head south. There's a tremendous amount of fish that are raised by the different tribes and a lot of the salmon and steelhead clubs in Puget Sound. So anyway, keep this in mind. Last year, Connor and I went over here. This is a good story. Last year we came over here. Maybe it was either last year or year before. I think it was last year. We came. This is really cool. So we're fishing out here, out in like 150, 140 feet of water, probably where this circle is right here. And I'm fishing along, and I'm seeing all these fish fishing, flipping on the top of the water close to shore. And actually it was a few days before Connor went with me. I took him after I found these fish. And these fish are in 30 feet of water. And we came here, and you might have seen my GoPro camera video where I videoed these fish biting on the stuff that I had out. Well, I got to stop pushing that button. Come on now. So anyway, we found these fish here in 30 feet of water, and I'm telling you, that was the fastest coho fishing I've ever seen, Connor. You couldn't catch fish faster, any kind of fish. I don't care what kind of fish it was. That was the fastest fishing I've ever seen. And I tried that this year. I think it was a once-in-a-lifetime thing. It was pretty cool, though. I tried that a week ago, and there was nothing in there. Shipwreck. All of us fish the shipwreck. Year in and year out. Well, I'm telling you, the shipwreck is just a staple of fishing. And there's a lot to fish in the shipwreck. Remember we talked about, here's possession point. We talked about the fishing coming across the bar. A really good troll is either from the shipwreck, going this direction, or starting at the possession buoy and going to the shipwreck. Really good troll. And then a lot of those fish, though, are coming down. Remember, we talked about the fish coming down past the traffic buoy out there. They're coming down here into Browns. This is Browns Bay down here between the shipwreck and Edmonds, and those fish get down there, and then they, at different stages of the tide, especially the incoming tide, those fish start working along, and there's, right off Picnic Point there's some structure right there. There's a bar that sticks out there quite a bit, and it attracts a lot of bait, and of course, anytime you have bait, it attracts salmon. And then the shipwreck is just a little bit south of, it's kind of on the south part of, it's on the north part of that structure. And those fish just hang out and they mill in that area. A lot of pink salmon in there and a lot of coho salmon in there. And it's been good lately. So a lot of you guys who want to fish locally, don't want to make that run to the south part of, or mid part of Puget Sound, that's a good place to stop and fish. And it's an excellent place to fish. Okay, here's where it's been happening. Well, I'm going to have 3 slides of the Edmonds area. Edwards Point right here, the transition between Area 9 and Area 10. Area 9, hatchery only. Area 10, if you catch it, you keep it, as long as it's a coho. Edmonds has been so good. When I tell you it's been good, if you haven't been fishing in the last week, I can't explain to you how good the fishing is. And this is the good news, is when Connor and I were working today, we heard several reports of extraordinary fishing. I'm not talking about good fishing, I'm talking about extraordinary fishing. It was really, really, really good Friday and Saturday, but today I guess it was just off the charts good. So extraordinary fishing. And I don't say that very often. Okay. Remember the video of, well, we'll get into that in a little bit. Not the video, but the pictures. One of my favorite trolls is right here, right down the 9-10 line. Oh, I'm telling you what, I catch more fish there than, more coho there than almost anywhere. I just love fishing there. It's pretty busy there in the morning because when everybody's running out of the Edmonds Marina, they come up there from Shoal, and then us guys who run out of the Everett Marina and go down there, everybody starts fishing there. And so for the first hour of the day, it's really congested in there. Another good troll too here, and I didn't put it in there because it's kind of confusing of where to stay legal, but this is the Edmonds Marina right here. First thing in the morning, if the tide is coming in, the fish are right here, and I'm going to tell you why it's really good in front of the marina. But if you catch a wild fish right there, you have to let him go till you get across this line. Remember, the fish are coming into Browns Bay, and this is the southern end of Browns Bay right here. When the tide's coming in, those fish are coming out of Browns Bay, and they're streaming right down here, and they're going to all those destinations we talked about in South Puget Sound. When the tide's coming in, it just brings them out of there. The fish are able to swim in the same direction of the current, and away they go to their destination. And a lot of the fish are coming right down here to the center, and they stop right here. And I'm going to tell you the reason why they stop there. From right here, actually from about right in here, there's a piece of structure, and you probably never even noticed it before, but you will now that I've told you about it. There's a piece of structure that's actually quite deep. It gets out to 300-400 feet deep, real quick here offshore. And it gets to be 500 feet. In that 500-foot line, see 107 there, way out there in the shipping lane, it's 600. Now, that structure runs out there that's real deep. And then there's this break from about where this fish is out into this area here. And this chart doesn't really portray it. But right in this area here, it goes from 500 and it goes down to 700 or 800 immediately. And the fish hang off that break right there. Why they hang off that break, I couldn't tell you. But there's something there that attracts them. Either upwelling off the bottom, there's feed there that hangs off these breaks. But whatever it is, that's where the fish hang out, right here. And it's just a coincidence that that line between 9 and 10 is right there. But that piece of structure is right there. And then right here, this is just to the east of the shipping lanes right here. On Saturday, I love the last hour of the outgoing tide. I just love being right in here. This is where I want to be, right here in 250 to 350 feet of water. That's real close to shore. That is absolutely my most favorite place. And remember what I told you a few minutes ago. You don't just show up at these places. There's places that you strategically fish at real particular stages of the tide. You don't just go to these places and hang out and troll up and down these big areas that we're talking about here. There's places that you have to be, whether it's Chinook or Coho. And always when I fish, I place myself at a strategic part of the time. One of the days, Connor and I and Malachi, who works for Connor, we were fishing Possession Bar one evening, and we were fishing that southeast corner of Possession Bar. And it was really crowded that evening. And so, and we're fishing the corner right there, and I wanted to stay on the corner, and I couldn't. So I just moved in a little bit in shallower water than what I normally would fish, and there was a lot of bait in there. And we worked that corner, and we really, really ripped up the kings out. It was really good fishing. So I like to be at real particular places, no matter what species of salmon I'm fishing. I like to be at particular places at particular times. When the tide's running really hard, there's a lot of flow to the water. Doesn't matter whether the tide's going out or coming in. I like to be out here. The very best fishing is just to the east of the shipping lane when the tide's running really hard. And sometimes I go out there and the fishing, you make a troll north and south in there, and the fishing isn't very good, but you have to be patient out there, because here's what's going on. When there's a lot of flow, these fish are coming in from Admiralty Inlet, and a lot of them are turning this corner really wide. And remember, all these fish aren't going to like the Lake Washington, which is just down the road from here, in the ship canal, where they go up to Lake Washington, go up the tributaries. A lot of those fish are going down to South Sound. So they're turning this corner wide, and they're headed for South Puget Sound. And this can be really good, and it has been really good. So now you see that we're not just looking at these spots. We're picking these particular spots apart and where to be at real particular stages of the tide. Very important part. Remember what I told you about, you all know somebody who catches a lot of fish all the time? This is what they know. They know where to be. These guys know where to be at real particular stages of the tide. They fish so much, they catalog this in their mind from years and years of fishing. They know exactly where to be. Just like when Jake and I were up in the San Juans, we needed to move inside all of a sudden, and the fish were there. We don't just go fish places because, and this is the worst thing that you can ever do in your life, especially Chinook fishing more than Coho fishing. You catch a whole bunch of fish one week, and so let's say you fish on the weekends, because that's when you have weekends off, or you fish Wednesdays, because that's when you have when you fish. That's when you have a day off. And the inclination always, myself, everybody in this room, we all do it. We go right back to where we fished the last place we did really well. We all fall in that trap. And it's absolutely the worst thing you can do. You want to go where the conditions are right and the tides are right for that particular day. So when you're catching fish, you might want to make a note of it. You can buy one of my books from Connor. You can make a note. I know a lot of guys who do that. They'll open the pages to that map, and they'll write down the tide and they'll write down the condition. Pretty important. It's probably something that a lot of you never thought about before. Maybe a lot of you have, but most people don't think about that. They just go fishing. They just show up. And I'm telling you what I want you to notice the next time you fish. Most people catch a fish. You watch it this weekend. Most people catch a fish. You just watch that boat straight ahead for half, 3/4 of a mile. Away they go. If you ever see me out fishing, you'll never see me do that unless I'm changing locations. I fish a real particular area. When I was fishing, especially Friday and Saturday, I was fishing in here, and I was fishing here. More so right here on Saturday. But when we caught all those 8 fish on Friday. I was kind of fishing from the end of this fishtail up here, up into here, and down here a little bit. There was a lot of flow that day. And so I stuck to that area. Okay, one more spot. My most favorite troll that I do when I go to Edmonds is I start here at the oil tank farm, which is right here. The very best fishing that Connor and I had last year, this is called the weather buoy right here. Just a little buoy out there. It's about 3/4 of a mile south of the oil tanks there. I heard it was good there the last 2 days, so keep that in mind. More than half the time that I go to Edmonds, I start fishing right here in 450 feet of water. Especially if the tide's going out. Now I'm going to tell you why. Especially if the tide's going out. This is going to make a lot of sense to you. Because if the tide's going out, the fishing's going to the north. Let me back up one slide. The oil tanks is right here in the corner. So if the tide's going out and the fishing isn't any good down there at the oil tanks, one of my most favorite places to fish, I can be here in a few minutes, because when the tide's going out, you're going 4 miles an hour. You're moving out. So if the tide's coming in, I always start up here. Always, 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 always. Because I'll fish this line, I'll fish back in this corner, and if the fishing isn't any good, I'll make this loop out, and I'll come back down to the oil docks. And usually, by that time, I may never make it to the oil docks, or vice versa. I may never make it down there to the 9-10 line. But you'll figure out where the fishing's good. So I don't just start. Remember how we started this conversation on this slide? I don't just go to a spot and fish because I caught fish there the time before. Everything, when I turn the key off in the boat, it all has to do with what the tide's doing right then.
And you're always trolling with the tide. Trolling with the tide.
I'm starting fishing during the day. I'm 100% of the time, I'm trolling in the same direction as the tide. Now that'll change, pretty within the hour of fishing, or if you catch some fish and you want to circle back. But first thing of the day, because the fishing, most days, not always, most days you'll catch more fish trolling in the same direction of the tide. No exception of that was last Saturday. Every single fish I caught was trolling against the tide. One of the very few exceptions when that happens. Okay, back to this slide. See these 8 fish right here? Started right there. Caught a couple fish between here and here. Trolled along here, caught a couple more, and started catching fish here. And, catching 8 fish is hard to do. And I'm not patting myself on the back, because when we got to 4 that day, I thought, oh, this is a good day. We had the kids with us, and we wanted to show them a good day of catching fish. I thought, well, this is really cool. Got 4 fish. That's a good day of fishing. I don't care who you are. 4 fish, Coho, Puget Sound. That's a good day of Coho fishing. So then we caught a couple more. And so now we're up to 6 fish, I think. And out here, so now we're up in here, and the bite just completely went off. It's later in the morning. It's getting towards low tide. I'm going to back up a little bit here now. When an hour before low tide, I've got to be back in this corner in 350 to 450 feet of water. told my crew I had that day, I had my wife and Jordan, his girlfriend. I said, it was pretty crowded that day. You know, Friday is like nobody works on Fridays anymore. So, you know. So anyway, I told those guys, I said, okay, it's an hour before low tide. We got 2 fish to go. We're going to go for it. You guys want to stay out here, catch these last 2 fish? And, you know, the fish was pretty good, so everybody wanted to do it. And as soon as I remember about sticking to the game plan? A few slides back, I knew that I had to be in here an hour before low tide. Bang, hit 2 fish right away. So I stick to my game plan. I know where to be on different stages of the tide. I think this is all making a lot of sense now. We're kind of bringing all this together. That you don't go out there and just troll around, or you don't just go over here because you saw a guy catch a fish over there. Already went through the Edmonds oil tanks. Okay, this is just another shot at off Edmonds. If you don't have a wild fish in your boat, feel free to cross the line right here, and I do it regularly, especially before I have any fish in the boat. A lot of times I like to stop a little short of the line. If I catch wild fish, gotta let it go. But it's been 80% hatchery fish down here. So, you know, feel free to start in this corner right here, or to start, well, I'll tell you what, this thing is very sensitive. Feel free to stop short of the line here and then troll, especially if the tide's coming in, and troll into area 10. Meadow Point. Last year was the first year that I fished Shilshaw in Meadow Point, and I tell you what, it was just absolutely delightful. My charter boat friends, Lenny from All Star Charters, he fishes down there quite a bit, and he told me about it. And it's probably another 10 minutes past Edmonds. It's a pretty good run here from Everett. I've already gone down there twice in the last week, and I'm proud to tell you I caught nothing both trips. Went to Edmonds and caught my limit after I went there, but I heard it's starting to the guys are starting to catch fish there right now. I heard they did very, very good yesterday out here in 600 feet of water. Normally, I fish in here in 250 feet of water right off Meadow Point. It's absolutely one of my most favorite places to fish, Edmonds being my most favorite place to fish Coho. This is just an excellent, excellent place to fish, and I'm going to tell you why. Right here's the ship canal, goes to Lake Union, goes to Lake Washington, and there's big coho hatcheries and some natural fish up in those tributaries of Lake Sammamish, Lake Washington. I think there's a big hatchery on Lake Sammamish. I don't know if it's a coho hatchery or not. Anyway, there's a lot of coho that go up in those lakes and spawn. And what they do is they all mill around right here. And I'm telling you, the fishing can be so good, so good. And it's just starting to get good right now. I don't have a slide of it. I'm going to have Connor tell you this story because this is one of my best fishing stories. Right off here is Meadow Point. So I'm telling Connor, so I'm just slaying the fish down there at Meadow Point day after day after day after last year. So Connor, I said, man, we got to go down to Shilshaw and fish on Meadow Point, and I'm going to show him the fastest fishing that he's ever seen in his life. So we get down there. We get down to here to Meadow Point. Nothing.
I think we hooked one right away.
Let me take it to West Point, and then I'm going to let you take over. So now we troll to West Point down here. I've never fished West Point before, and there was an armada of boats out there. Did we catch fish off West Point? Got a fish somewhere around there.
We caught it up at Meadow Point. Right.
Did we catch one there in the morning? So now we're down here, and it's noon.
Oh, yeah.
You know how far it is from Meadow Point to Edmonds? It's a long ways. It's a real long ways, especially if you're trolling. Take it from there, Connor.
Yeah, so me and John were fishing down at West Point. You can see the Space Needle and everything. It's a really cool place to fish, but we had never been down there, and there was nothing going on. It was dead slow. And tide was going out, so we trolled with the tide, and we started from West Point, and we trolled up to the yellow can off of Jeff Head, and we didn't catch a fish until we got to Jeff Head.
And that's a long troll.
It had to, what?
It's the longest troll I've ever made.
Yeah, longest troll I've went without catching a fish, but when we got up to Jeff Head, that's where we got the rest of our fish.
So we get down to the yellow buoy,
Yep.
and we catch a fish. I think it's,
We caught a blackmouth first.
no, that's right, we caught a Chinook that we let go at Jeff Head. So now it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We have one fish in the boat. And, it's looking pretty grim. It was a pretty day out. Nobody around. We're at the yellow separation buoy there at Jeff Head. 30 minutes. Had a 4-fish limit in the boat.
Yep.
Just like that. I don't think I'd ever troll that far again.
No.
That was gruesome.
We just go to Jeff
There was
Head.
nothing, we had nothing going on that day. Most days, I would have packed it up and gone home. And
I was waiting for you to do that. I wasn't going to leave.
yeah, it was one of those days where we didn't stick to the game plan. We just kept going south. We were going to run into fish. So anyway, that was the longest troll of my life. Jeff Head. All of you who fish in the springtime before Chinook fishing starts, right off Jeff Head, this is where we catch resident coho. I have heard that this has been good the last 2 or 3 days. That's kind of a secondhand report, so don't take my word for it. There's nobody fishing over here. Like, there might be 1 or 2 boats every day, but I heard it's been good. Normally I wouldn't go there, but I'm going to go there next week and fish. And then here's the yellow buoy. West Point is down here about 10 miles, maybe 5. It's a long ways. So anyway, this is where we catch those resident coho. And I know guys have been catching some mature coho in the last 7 days right off this shelf right here in 450 feet of water. The shelf goes 90, 150, and then it just drops off to never land. It's that sharp edge. That is absolutely my most favorite place to fish for Chinook in Puget Sound, right there. No better place to fish than that. I mean, there's better places to fish. That's my favorite place to fish. But back to coho.
And there's
Another really good spot. So if you get down to Edmonds, and it's too crowded for you, if you're not catching any fish, come on over here and fish. And it's really good when the tide's going out. Very, very good place to fish. When the tide's coming in, there's so much seaweed in here, you almost can't fish. It drives you absolutely out of your mind. And then this is the yellow separation buoy here. This can be really good for coho here. Not too many people fish there just because there's better places to fish. But if nothing's going on, it's a place to look at. And if you're at Edmonds, I mean, you're right there. You're 5 minutes away from the yellow separation buoy.
And there's always a real nice tide rip off of Jeff Head.
Always a nice
Always
tide
find
rip
one
there,
there.
yeah. A lot of water there. It's a cool place to fish. There's a lot of structure there. Just a lot of fish. There's more bait there than any other place I know of in Puget Sound. Okay, everybody, be organized. These are flasher bags. Before you go fishing, this is going to be one of the better tips I give you tonight. There's no tying gear in the boat. Tie all your gear at home. Have it all ready to go. Have your squids attached to your flashers. Put them in the flasher bag. Now I'm going to tell you a really good tip, especially if you're tying up squid. Put your squid in a plastic bag because they melt into the flashers. So put it in a little Ziploc bag, a little baggie, and then put them in your flasher bag. Do not wrap your leaders around the flashers when you put them in here. Even if you're using fluorocarbon leader, you're putting little turn spots in your leader that reflects light. And the whole idea behind using fluorocarbon leader is so the leader is crystal clear. So don't make it so it's not crystal clear. Have your flasher bag, all your stuff ready to go. When I had my son and his girlfriend out the other day, I was using my bait casting reels, and I said, whatever you do, do not push this button when we got a fish in the boat. Don't push this button on the reel. Of course, everybody in this room knows what happened. You know, it went from having a full spool line to when I had the scissors out, you know, I cut it all off. So I cut everything off. But I was ready to go in minutes because I had another rod and I had everything ready to go. So have all your gear ready to go all the time. You'll lose a squid. I mean, you hardly ever lose gear coho fishing, sometimes Chinook fishing, but have your spare stuff ready to go.
Another really good way to set up your squids is to tie them with a little barrel swivel on the end of him.
A number 5 black swivel.
Yeah, a little black swivel, and then you can just, I mean, that snap swivel on the bottom of your flasher, you can swap stuff out really fast.
Because then you can go from an ace-high fly or to a squid just immediately.
Yep.
Pretty good way to do it. Game changer. Now we're really going to get into some gear. And it's going to be real focused on just a handful of things. There's more things that catch fish. We already went through that. This is what catches fish all the time. If I thought there was 2 or 3 things, 5 things that you must have, you got to have in your boat all the time, 5 different flashers, 5 different colors of squid, I'd have them on my boat. That's why I'd fish. There's no expense that I don't go through to catch fish. I don't care what it costs. I have it on my boat. I have the best gear, but you know what? I have one color of flasher that I use for coho. One color. Last year, ProTroll came out with blinking lights on their flashers, and everybody kind of poo-pooed the idea. Every day that Connor and I open up that store, every single day, including today, there was a guy in the store today, Connor, went to CQ, remember that guy?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Had a ProTroll blinking flasher. Every single fish they caught on their 2-day trip came on one rod because his buddy didn't have one. I've experienced that when I first started using it. In fact, this is how the story goes. Connor and one of the guys working for us, John, you got to have these ProTroll blinking lights. I said, nobody's going to fish for that crap. It's like, no, we're not going to sell this stuff with blinking lights on it. That's too far out on the edges. And I've really prided myself over the years of not promoting stuff that's kind of in the gray area a little bit. I like promoting the mainstream stuff that works all the time. Blinking lights are mainstream, and they're here to stay because flashers with blinking lights on them, not every day, 99% of the days, are going to catch more fish than anything else. And it's not just me telling you that. It's a whole stream of guys. Every day that store's open, a guy walks in that door and tells us this story that I just told you. I was fishing with this flasher with a blinking light, and I caught all the fish on the boat. At first I thought it was just a novelty, and we're just going out and catching fish on these new items until the story came in. Day after day after day after day, and it's still happening. UV flashers. UV got real popular 2 or 3 years ago. Everything I use has UV on it. Most of the tackle you have in your boat nowadays is UV. The flashers, the squid, the ace-high flies. Everything is UV. Reflects a tremendous amount of light. Well, I've done a tremendous amount of fishing with my GoPro camera. And when that flasher's rotating, and most of the depths that I'm using my GoPro camera at is at 60 feet. And even at 60 feet, where there's not too much light in Puget Sound, every rotation of that flasher, when it goes towards the sun, upwards, it just flashes quite brightly, especially when the sun is out. Think about it. The blinking light's doing the same thing that UV's doing, but it's not doing it every rotation. It's doing it all the time. Everybody in this room who fishes any at all knows that UV works better than anything else, and you have to have it. UV flashers, UV squids, UV squid inserts. Everything has to be UV. This is the flasher that got it all started here. I believe it's called the Green Hornet. This is put out by ProTroll. You can see that light that's embedded in there. Those lights last about 80 hours. This is those 4 Coho right there. Before I started modifying some of my own flashers, and a lot of you guys saw my video on modifying flashers. There was Chinook fishing video, seeing that we were putting these lights on other flashers. This is how it all started right here. This is a scene from last year. This is the flasher that got it all going. And I'm telling you what, we order these, we're a small store. We order these hundreds at a time. Hundreds. Last year, we sold more than this company could ship us. We sold that many. And people don't buy this stuff just because it's new and exciting. They buy this stuff because it works. This is an excellent color for Coho and Chinook also.
And we noticed a huge difference when we were fishing early in the morning and the sun wasn't out. Almost all of our fish were coming on a blinky flasher.
Always.
We were running a purple haze and that same green hornet, and every fish in the morning came off that flasher.
And that's, we started the way most of you started who are using this gear. We started, we'll put a blinky on one rod. Well, it wasn't very long before we had blinkies on all rods all the time. And that's the way we fish now, every day. Chinook and Coho. The old way, there's purple haze flasher, green hornet squid. Everybody, we all caught a lot of fish on this. We all caught a fish on all the old school stuff. But there's improvements in tackle all the time. Just think about it. Not too many years ago, maybe 20, there wasn't any spoons with glow paint on them. And then came along coyote spoons. And it was the greatest revolution in Chinook fishing you ever seen. And then we have all these spoons with UV and with glow paint on them now. Pretty big revolution in tackle. Seemed like kind of a minor thing talking about it today because we just take it for granted. That's what we go fishing with. But it was a big thing because everything was either nickel or nickel and silver or nickel with some silver spectra tape on it. And there was about a half a dozen choices of spoons to use. Okay, here's the new stuff. Here's a ProTroll blinking flasher right here with a blinking light embedded in it. And then here's a flasher that I modified right here. This is a Gibbs flasher, purple haze. And the way I started doing this, I cut a hole in my flashers just like this. But you know what happened? The very first trip I went out, within the first hour, all the purple haze tape peeled off my flashers. That lasted one day. So I thought, well, I'm just going to screw the light right to the face of the flasher. Well, that's going to mess up the rotation. And it didn't. The flasher is so big. They're 11 inches long. They overwhelm anything you attach to it within reason. Purple haze squid, ace high fly right there. I've been catching, last week I caught all my fish on this fly with this flasher with that blinking light on it. And it only takes a minute to drill a couple holes in your flasher and attach that light.
I was going to add, a lot of the times when I fish with John and we don't know what the fish are hitting on, that's exactly how we start. We start with one of our larger presentations, so the squid with the insert inside of it, and then we'll run a ace high fly on the other side. So you have a smaller presentation and you have a larger one. And at one point you'll figure out which one the fish want, and then we'll
you'll change over.
Yes.
Week before last, not last week, we caught all our fish at 60 feet using this rig right here. Last week, every single fish was caught on an ace high fly. The fishing was so much better on ace high flies that we went entirely with ace high fly with a strip of herring. This is my go-to rig to start with every Coho season right here. Purple haze squid, OAL 12R. If you go try to look for purple haze flashers right now, they're almost non-existent. we bought every one there was and sold them all. Thursday or Friday you might have some, did you think?
Yeah, I think I'll have some Friday.
You think they'll be there Friday? I'm telling you, we're such a small store, but we sell so much stuff that we completely clean out. Not the distributors, but the factories. We buy everything they can send us. It's pretty cool. It's pretty fun. Especially, when we're doing business, up against the bigger stores. It's fun being a small store and selling the quantity of stuff that we sell. Boy, this is it. If you guys are fishing this weekend, I wouldn't even consider anything else except this rig right here. There's your purple ace flash with the blinking light that you have to put on your flasher yourself, and ace high fly, number 312. And don't even try to go out and buy one of those, because there hasn't been any for a couple weeks. And Silverhorn, who makes them, Silverhorn Gold Star, which is one of our local manufacturers, they don't have any. All this stuff comes from Japan, and there isn't any. See those two beads right there? Everything that you see in this photo makes a difference. You got to be at particular places at particular stages of the tide. Everything down to the minute detail here makes a difference. Red bead and a clear bead, or they're both glow. You think it doesn't make a difference? It makes a little bit of difference. It's the sum of the total of everything you see here. Why is there people that catch more fish than everybody else? It's everything we're talking about tonight. It's the reason why they catch more fish. And it's the reason why they catch more fish all the time. Everything is about the details, whether it's where you fish or what you're fishing with. See these hooks right here? First part of the season, I was using 4/0 hooks. Most days, I was landing 50% of all the fish we hooked in the boat. When my friend and I, Don Ringman, were out a week, 10 days ago, he said, John, we ought to go back to 5/0 hooks. And I did. And the last 3 trips, almost every single fish we hooked, it's not an anomaly, almost every single fish we hooked in the last 3 trips, and I caught a lot of salmon, a lot. Those 5/0 hooks just hooked those fish right up. And what I noticed is the hook that's hooked in the mouth, of course, is hooking the fish where they always get hooked, but that other hook, every hook size, the gap between the tip of the hook and the shank of the hook is getting wider. And I noticed that almost always we're getting a double hookup in these fish. Just, you wouldn't think that little thing gets back to what I'm telling you. All these little things make a lot of difference. A lot of difference. And it's not one single thing that makes a lot of difference. It's everything we're talking about tonight. You put all this stuff together and you're going to be really successful.
And we use those beads also to help with spacing between our hooks. Put 2 beads, and that kind of gives us a reference on how far apart we want our hooks.
Yeah. Another, kind of like a little added benefit. It's not the reason why they're for attraction. But the added benefit with those 2 beads between the hooks, it gives you a good buffer from abrasion, especially if you're hooking a bunch of fish. Your leader doesn't get nicked up. Okay, here's your OAL 12R 3.5 squid right here. And inside this squid is this ace high fly. So when I'm using squid, I use this ace high fly as an insert. Real important. Now, let's move down to the ace high flyer, number 312. When I'm using this ace high fly, I'm putting a needlefish insert. Now, it needs to be a needlefish because the regular squid inserts are too big to put inside of here, and it's glow, the glow insert. I put it inside of there, and I trim a little bit off the end of the insert because it's longer than the ace high fly. Even the ace-eye fly is considerably smaller than a squid. And even so, we're still using 5/0 hooks.
And
Those are your two primary rigs you're going to use.
And your 312s are UV.
Yeah,
So you got a
this is-
UV ace-eye fly with a glow insert.
That's right. All UV stuff. It's the only, it's, besides the coho killer that I'm not going to use again, it's the only two items in my boat. And I have lots of these in my boat, all tied up, ready to go. I have two colors of squid, ace-eye flies. These two right here. If I go out fishing tomorrow, no matter what the fish are biting on, it's the only selection in my boat. There is no plan B and C and D. This is it right here. I have that much confidence. Now I'm going to tell you why this works. A few days ago, I caught a fish, and its gut was just bulging. And I thought, boy, this thing's got a lot of herring on it. I was cleaning it down here at the cleaning station. And it must have had 500 shrimp. They're about 1/4 of an inch long if they were that big. And guess what color they were? They were translucent, and they were absolutely identical in color of these squids. Most of the time you wouldn't notice those. Most of the time you wouldn't notice those small little shrimp in the fish's gut because you wouldn't be looking for them because they usually don't have that many. Normally they'd be digested or they'd have 5 or 6. And so I started looking at this and I thought, oh, and this is just something I learned recently. I thought, well, this makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it, if you just go out there fishing, you're thinking that this stuff represents a 5-inch herring that they're feeding on. Well, it doesn't. There's these little, they are exactly the same color as these little shrimp they're feeding on. It makes a lot of sense. So you're learning something all the time. Here's the lights. Here's the thing that changed everything right here. Here's the blinky lights. They last about 80 hours. So you need to wipe them off. The electrodes, the contacts, I should say, on the one end. This is the side with the eyeball on it. If you're putting these on your flasher, and I should have brought this up earlier, if you're putting on these on your flasher, the eyeball is against the flasher because the contacts are on the other side. And if you put the contacts against the flasher when they get wet, you won't be able to turn the light off by toweling it off. A rag that's in a boat collects too much moisture, and most of the time it's too hard to turn the lights off. So, and if you're going to mount these to your flashers, you can drill 3 30-second holes in your flasher, and the screws that come with these lights, and they only include 2, they don't have 4, even though there's 4 holes and 2 of these in a package. You either have to go to Ace Hardware and buy some small screws, or Connor's got them at the store. That picture was taken Friday. Okay. I got to get my prop out here. A lot of you guys who know me, and I got to eat a little crow here. I have told everybody over the years, you can catch more fish on 2 rods than you can put 3. Don't put 3 rods out. Total waste of time. Going to get a fish on, everything's going to get all tangled up. And then my good friend Nick Pulley, who makes all the lead for John Sporting Goods, he fishes these are Dodgers, just like in the photo right there. And he fishes these on the surface. So when I was out on Friday, remember there was 4 of us in the boat, and normally I'd fish with just 2 rods, so I thought, I'm going to bring this along. And I predicted, and I told Connor this, I said, I bet you in 5 minutes I'm going to cut this thing off my line and be so disgusted with it because it's going to be tangled up with everything else, because I've fished 3 lines lots of times and the result is always the same. As soon as you make a turn, everything is one piece between the 3 rods going out. Connor, I'm going to have you stand right over there. On the end of my line right here you don't need to see it because it's on the slide, is a Slido. And that's just kind of a generic name. There's a lot to make. That's a Slido right there. And this leader right here, see that? Between there and the flasher is about 30 inches long. They can be 30, 36. Doesn't have to be 30, but about 30 inches long. And then about 16 inches to your squid right here. And so on Friday, I'm giving this a try, and I put it out with no weight on it because my good friend Nick Pulley catches fish regularly with no weight at all, because this has enough weight where it'll go down maybe 5 feet. So I fished it for 15, 20 minutes, no fish. So, well, I was letting it out. This is part of the story. I was letting it out 50 pulls, about 100 feet. So I put on a 4-ounce lead, let it out 50 pulls, fished another half hour, no fish. Okay? So I pull it in, one more try. I pull out the 6-ounce sinker right here. You got a fish on right now, Connor. So this is attached to the Slido right here. What's nice about the Slido is you can just clip on any size weight real handily versus a banana style weight. And so I put on the 6-ounce, put it out 50 pulls, no fish. Pull it in, because I think we had a fish on or something, and I put it out 25 pulls, 3 fish, just like that. Just like that. And one of the most amusing things is, once we had 2 fish to go, and so we caught this fish, and I think it was the nicest fish of the day. So we bonked him and put him in the box, and while we had this fish on, I took this rod and I put it up on the rocket launchers on the top of my boat just to kind of get it out of the way so we can land this fish. And so we're kind of high-fiving it, and you know, the kids are really happy because they're catching all these fish, and so we're trolling along. We got one more fish to go, and this guy comes by us, you know, and here we are, you know, we're supposed to be the experts out there and everything. This guy comes by and he goes, "Hey, you guys know you got a fish on that rod? We've been towing this other fish the whole time we had this other fish." "Oh yeah, I guess we do, don't we?" So by the time we got that fish in the boat, and that fish was pretty exhausted. But back to this outfit right here. That was the second time in one season somebody told me I had a fish on a rod. It's like, man, I'm kind of losing touch of what's going on. So anyway, if you're going to put this out, put it out. I like to put it just straight out the side of the boat. I was asking my good friend Nick Pulley how he puts them out. He doesn't put them up at an angle. He puts it out the side of the boat, just like I did. If you got a pole holder, that will do that. And you know, just don't let it out very far. Those coho are right behind the boat. They're attracted by the prop wash from your kicker motor or your big motor. And they're right there all the time. So I'm a believer in the third outfit. Good way to fish. Really, really good way to put a third rod. You got almost all of us have 2 downriggers on the boat. Got 3 guys in the boat. Put this out. Good way to fish. It'll put extra fish in your boat. This rod and reel that we have right there has got a Dakota 500 or 3. Is that the 500 or 300 on there? 500.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite reels. They don't make this reel, but they make a newer Dakota 500. And that particular rod is Lemoglass red line, medium heavy. They're 9'4". It's absolutely my most favorite rod. I have some more expensive rods, but that's my favorite rod. And they won't break the bank. They're about $125, $129. If you go in the store tomorrow, tell Connor you're at the seminar, he'll probably give you a good deal. Give him a good deal on that rod tomorrow.
Of course I will. Yes, I will.
There you go.
Seminar
I'm selling
deal.
rod for you.
Yeah.
Make sure I get a commission too.
Of course.
So leave a little cushion in there for me. But that is absolutely my favorite rod that I use right there. So 3 of these fish right here. Remember we showed this picture at the beginning. 3 of those fish were caught on that outfit right there. So I'm learning things all the time, just like the rest of you. After 66 years of fishing, I don't profess to know it all. I don't think I'm the greatest fisherman. I think far from it. I learn a lot of stuff from you guys. Nick Pulley told me about this, or else I would have never tried it on my own. I would have been stuck in my old stubborn ways of just putting out 2 rods. Okay? Hooks, 5/0 owner hooks, or 5/0 gamakatsus, either one. I like the owner hooks. They're the sharpest hooks made. These are number 6 glow beads. 30-pound fluorocarbon leader. I use P-line leader. I use no other leader than P-line leader. It's absolutely my favorite type of leader. That's exactly how I tie them, right there. Let's look at a few items that you need to have. Your P-line fluorocarbon leader. It's by far not the most expensive fluorocarbon leader there is. In fact, it's cheaper than most of the brands. These are just glow beads. There's a lot of different brands of glow beads. This is our daughter. 5/0 owner hooks, another thing that's impossible to find right now. And then sample ball bearing swivels. The sample ball bearing swivels are at the end of the fishing line that you snap right onto the flasher. And only use this brand. They're good American-made ball bearing swivels, and it'll keep the line twist most of the time out of the main line, especially when you're trolling 3.5 miles an hour for coho. There's a lot of line twist. This will help you out quite a bit. These are items that you have to have. That particular fish was caught about 10 days ago. Caught 5 fish that day. Let's talk about hooks for a second. Hooks cost about $1. It's like penny candy when I was growing up. They're $1. They're the most important thing that you're going to put in your boat. It costs $1. You're going to go out in the derby, or you're going to take your friends out fishing someday when there's not a derby. New hooks every day. Every day. Gas down here at the Port of Everett's almost $4 a gallon. And you're going to go through several gallons of gas. Rods and reels nowadays, the average price of a fishing rod's $100. The average price of a good fishing reel's $100 to $200. It's the least expensive thing that's in your boat. Right there. But you know what? When you go fishing, it's the most important thing you're going to have on the end of your line. New hooks all the time. I'm guaranteeing you, if you use new hooks all the time, you're going to catch more fish. Very important. It's one of those small things that make a difference all the time. Let's watch this. Actually, we're running out of time. I think we're not going to watch this video. This video on making herring strips is online. I've had it on my website for a long time. So we're going to conserve a little bit of time right here. Fillet your herring. Once you fillet your herring, cut that fillet down here the long way. Put them flesh side up. Coat them with rock salt. Don't put them in the refrigerator. You're doing this the day before you go fishing. Leave them out in the garage. Leave them out, but don't refrigerate them, because if you refrigerate them, they won't harden up real good. You're going to be putting fillets of herring on all the time. If you're out there coho fishing and you get a strike and a fish robs your piece of herring, reel in immediately and put a new herring strip on there. Because if you don't put a new herring strip on there, trust me, I'm on the water all the time. You're going to wait a long time until the next strike. Long time. Makes a tremendous amount of difference. Coho depths. Fish are going to be suspended out in deep water. Fish 30 to 60 feet at daylight. Past 7 days, most fish have been at 45 feet. After 8:30, drop down 10 feet per hour. Most years I do that, throw that rule out the window. This year, it's not working this year. Most years it does. Most years by 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, I'm fishing 90 feet deep. This year, 45. This past week anyway. Week before it was just 60. It just changes all the time. And so after 8:30 in the morning, it's not uncommon to go 90 to 150 feet, except for this year. And that's a good reason. That's the reason why you're here tonight, because a lot of us who fish all the time, just, who are out in the water all the time, we can pass this information on to you. It can really, really be a shortcut to being very successful. Trolling speed, 3.0 to 3.5 miles an hour. That'll vary quite a bit between trolling into the tide, which you'll be going slower, and when you're going with the tide, you could probably be going as much as 4 miles an hour. The cable angle takes precedence over speed over ground. Got to have a pretty severe cable angle. Actually, if you're only fishing 45 feet, it won't be that severe. But if you're fishing, once you start fishing 60, you'll notice that severe angle quite a bit. Biggest mistake is trolling too slow. Not catching any fish, speed up. All the things that we talked about tonight, you can either come to John's Sporting Goods, you can buy your items. A lot of people in Everett, just a few blocks away from the store, everything we talked about, you can order online from us. Just don't order any Purple Haze flashers because we don't have any till Friday. So this stuff will come right to your door. We ship it for free, unless it's lead. Small order, big order, ship it right to your door for free. It's just like coming down the store. Traffic is so hideous on I-5 nowadays. It's nice to come home and your 5/0 owner hooks around your door and your fluorocarbon leader, there it is. You're ready to watch the Seahawks and tie leaders. Okay, that's the end of the seminar. But here's what we're going to do. I'm going to entertain some questions. You can turn some lights on, please. Right after the questions, I'm going to auction off the trip with myself. I'll take you anytime you want to go. I'd prefer to go Chinook fishing, catch some big fish next summer when it opens here. I'll take you anytime you want to go. If you want to bring a friend, whatever you pay for this trip, he can pay the same amount. Okay? So everybody wants to go, just say, look,
Especially you.
it's going to cost you.
If we win the auction, we can't use you this weekend?
I'm not going fishing this weekend. No. Okay, so 100% of the money, 100% of the money from this fishing trip is going to fund our Eagle Creek hatchery. 100% of the money is going to the Everett Salmon Steelhead Club. And then right after that, we're going to have our raffle. Okay, so we'll kind of move this right along. So, who wants to start? Who's the opening bid? 200 right there. Starts at 200.